You're listening to English Academy, Platzi's English podcast. Learn about different topics as you improve your English listening skills. Join Platzi and have access to courses on product design, audiovisual production, data science, business, English, marketing, and more. Enjoy this week's episode.
Hello, welcome to English in Action, a podcast by Platzi English Academy. I'm Andres, and today we will be having a very interesting conversation about AI and how it can be implemented in the workplace. To do so, I've invited Renzo Cuadra, Soft Skills and Diversity School owner here at Platzi. Hey Renzo, how you doing? Thank you very much for coming to this episode.
Hi Andres, thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here. It's great to be in your podcast.
That's great. So, well, as I said, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. So I have prepared a couple of questions. I'm aware, that you are kind of an expert, can I say it, in artificial intelligence?
Well, maybe, I don't know if I'm an expert, but I do know a thing or two about AI.
Well, you know more than I do. I'm completely sure about that.
Well, okay, let's go with expert then.
So, well, to start with, I would like to ask you, Renzo, what are some of the current applications of artificial intelligence in the workplace?
Sure. I think we're currently living an AI wave. That's actually the way I called it in the course we did at Platzi. I call it a wave because there's a huge load of applications that are coming onto us in the last few months. And it makes for a really interesting time, right, to be in right now. I think everyone pretty much by now has heard of ChatGPT, which I think is the most disruptive tool of 2023 in terms of AI. ChatGPT, of course, is this chatbot that allows you to organize ideas, proofread texts, create essays, and maybe even email responses, and just organize your thoughts, right? Everything in text. It has a bunch of applications, so much so that it's even being used in other tools as well. ChatGPT is now an application that you can use with Slack, for example. Slack is a communication platform, and on Slack, ChatGPT can help you write messages, write summaries for someone, proofread messages maybe. You can even use it on Duolingo now to have ChatGPT explain an answer to you when you don't quite understand an answer to a quiz. And if we're referring to the workplace specifically, I think two of the biggest tools are about to be launched, which are Google Workspace and Microsoft Copilot. These two, I think, are going to be game changers because they will be your virtual assistants for the Office suite of Google, which is Google Drive and everything it has, Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets. And also, Microsoft Copilot is launching basically the same thing, but for Microsoft Office, right? PowerPoint, Microsoft Word, Excel, etc. What these tools will allow you to do is they will basically allow you to write entire documents, proofread everything you write on a Word document, for example, create a presentation from an email, from a document, write up like a PowerPoint presentation, and even interact differently with things like Excel. If you have a data sheet, for example, it will allow you to get data analysis by just asking questions, right? Say you have a table with a bunch of numbers and you can ask, hey, tell me what's the conversion rate for this given month, or tell me what are the products that are being sold the least, etc. And you can get all that information just by asking those questions.
All right. Those are tons of applications of this AI. And I think you mentioned a very important word, very disruptive. I think that's how many people feel it in different areas. I mean, not only in the workplace, but also in an educational environment, for music, well, for many different environments. Like some people are kind of afraid of this, but I think it's a tool that is going to be helping us, right? Which I think it's something that you talk about in your course, like this recent English course about artificial intelligence tools, right?
Indeed. In the English course to work with artificial intelligence tools, we talk about how to use some of these tools even. There's actually a class about how to write a proper prompt for ChatGPT. So the course will help you interact with ChatGPT in English.
And that's great. I think a very important part of these tools is knowing how to use them. So we can have like the best of them in our benefit. And that leads me to my next question, Renzo. How can AI improve productivity and efficiency in the workplace? What do you think?
Well, we just mentioned a few examples, right? I think very straightforward examples of how, for example, Microsoft Copilot or Google Workspace are now going to help you organize your ideas in a very different way. ChatGPT does the same thing. I think the power of AI is that it's not just a tool to find information. Google was also very disruptive when it came out in the early 2000s because it was a search engine that could help you find information anywhere on the internet. That was very valuable back then. Now we take Google for granted, but imagine a world without Google. It would be chaotic, right? Now, these artificial intelligence tools go not just one step, but I would say one huge leap forward in the sense that they will find information for you the way Google does, but they will also help you organize those ideas. They can help you make sense of all that information you're getting, classifying it, understanding it, and even building, say, an argument like an essay or a text, something to support certain position that you might have, and also to communicate that properly to whatever audience you're working for, right? So say you have to build a presentation on why your company should launch a product with artificial intelligence. Now, an AI can actually help you write that document, find the information, build the presentation, and help you deliver it in the most adequate way for your audience.
And that sounds very convenient, when having lots of workload in the workplace. So, as I said, we can use this artificial intelligence as the way it is, as a tool for our benefit, right?
Exactly. That's the idea. And you mentioned a keyword, productivity. I think that's it because, we're not talented and we're not capable of doing everything all at once, right? Some people are great at building presentations, others are great at analyzing numbers, others are great at writing, but there's very few people in the world that can do all these things at once. Now, we have a tool that will allow us to basically do that, right? Because, for example, if you were a great data analyst, but you weren't such a great writer, so your data reports would be, just so-so, now you have AI to help you build a report based on the data you analyzed on your insights. But now that report will be able to be understood by everyone that needs to read those insights and to actually understand them. So that is a very powerful tool, I think.
And well, how about the concerns? I think AI has waken up all these concerns in many different people. So what are some of these concerns around implementing artificial intelligence in the workplace? And how do you think they can be addressed?
I believe there are two main concerns regarding artificial intelligence in the workplace. Number one has to do with authenticity, the authenticity of the work that professionals now do, right? I think AI makes the line blurry between doing original work and plagiarizing something. You could claim that when you ask ChatGPT to write a text for you, it is basically original because it wasn't technically written by someone else. It was written by a digital tool, right? But of course, some other people might claim that since it wasn't your own writing, then it counts as plagiarism. as copying someone else's work. This is an ongoing discussion, so I don't think we should take a position just yet, but it is true that there is a concern about doing original work. Of course, there are some professions where this is very important and some where it's not. For example, programmers, software developers, they're used to using, for example, pieces of code that were written by someone else, that were found on the internet. And it's actually seen as a good thing. It's a common practice. But a journalist should be writing original work all the time, right? A journalist is not allowed to copy lines from other journalists' articles, for example. So there you have a bit of a more, difficult, more complicated situation. So plagiarism is one concern. I think a second concern would be security. With AI, you also have a great risk that everything you provide a system with, say the text you write in a prompt for ChatGPT, the instructions you give to a tool such as Microsoft Copilot, right? All that text that you're writing and all the data you're providing to that system will eventually end up in those company servers. That is inevitable. So it is very risky to provide that system with maybe confidential information that you should keep to yourself about your company. Maybe financial reports, stuff like that, right? So I think companies need to be aware of these concerns. They need to be very public about them as well. If there's a company that handles private information all the time, for example, then they should talk about that with their staff and put that out into the air so that the discussion can be had and they can get to a set of agreements about what is the proper use of these AI tools for the work they do.
Absolutely agree. I think this is a topic that companies must place on the table and talk about this with the employers. If not, we can use this tool, but without maybe taking into account the risks in terms of information. As you said, like security breaches that might be like really harmful for the company. So I think it's better if companies first address this with the employers, with the employees, and then, they can start like evaluating how to use what the best way of using this tool is. And well, talking about companies, how can companies ensure that AI is used ethically and in a way that doesn't harm employees?
Well, we just talked about a couple of concerns that companies might have. We talked about plagiarism and we mentioned security as well. I think the first step in addressing these concerns is to provide the training for employees to be able to use these tools responsibly, right? There might be some employees that just don't understand them at all. Maybe they don't even know about them. So I think this training will help them understand what the tools are for, what they can do and what they cannot do, because they will have limitations as well, right? And especially, employees should be trained to use these tools while following company policy and all the guidelines, also, of course, ethical guidelines that the company has in place. Now, also, part of this is to do what we just said, which was to put everything on the table. I think you said it perfectly. I'm talking about stating clearly what is allowed and what isn't. So for example, if we as a company don't want our financial reports ending up in the hands of, say, Google or Microsoft or any of these companies that develop AI tools, then we should give clear instruction to our employees not to provide this data into any of these tools that these companies have, right? So just putting everything out so that everyone understands, what it's all about, what are the rules, and what you can and cannot do.
That's very interesting. Those kind of different appreciations of it that I hadn't taken into account when thinking about AI. You mentioned as well limitations, and that's also something very important. Because some people might think that, AI is capable of doing everything right now. But I know there are some of these limitations. So what can you tell us about it, Renzo? What are some of the limitations of artificial intelligence in the workplace specifically?
Sure. In the course, we talk about the distinction between general AI and narrow AI. General AI is the science fiction AI. The idea of a system that can do everything for you, it basically acts as a human being, right? It understands feelings and emotions, and it can give you, relationship advice, everything. They can cook for you if you want to, etc. That is general AI, which is not yet possible. We haven't reached that point yet. Then there's narrow AI. Narrow AI is specific to a given purpose. That's where we are right now. So for example, ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, all these systems, they are narrow AI, which means they're only limited to a very specific set of purposes or objectives. ChatGPT, for example, is a great tool, especially ChatGPT 4, which is the current version, is great. And some would claim, and I would claim, it is the most advanced AI tool in the world right now. But, for example, it is not yet 100% intuitive. If you don't give it the right instruction, it won't understand what you're trying to say. It's not like a human being who will maybe ask you questions and help you rephrase your answers so that they get the exact meaning that you're trying to convey, right? So they will just give you the most optimal output, but that's it. It's up to you to judge if that output is useful or not for you. The other thing is, when it comes to generating text, also, ChatGPT is not perfect. It's not like having a professional ghostwriter that will just write all your texts for you. If you read enough texts generated by ChatGPT, you will notice that a lot of them are just a template. They follow the exact same structure. And that won't cut it for some professions or some contexts, right? If you want to write a beautiful letter addressing all your employees, maybe ChatGPT won't give you the text you need. If you need to write a book, a novel, something that's really creative, also ChatGPT will probably not be of great help because it will just be following a template. And in creative writing, the ideal is to get, outside of the template, to think outside the box. ChatGPT will not think outside the box, and I would say no AI at the moment thinks outside the box. It's just a bunch of algorithms interacting with each other and giving you an output, right? Even, for example, image generation platforms like Stable Diffusion, they're great for generating what you might call original creative images, but again, they're not so intuitive that they will be completely original while following the prompt that you give. They will give you images that maybe look alike. They're very similar between each other. And if you, for example, need to construct something like a brand manual, or if you want to build a corporate template, etc., it might not follow the guidelines that you give to it, right? So if you need to use certain colors in a certain way, certain shapes, certain logos used in a certain way, it won't really follow those guidelines that you provide. So it's not that intuitive just yet.
All right. So that leads me to one more question, Renzo, which is about the future of this tool. So what are some of the key skills that will be needed in the future workplace, of course, with the integration of artificial intelligence?
Of course, I see the future requiring 2 levels of skills, I might say. Level 1 is just being able to use these tools appropriately, right? So we talked about the training that companies should provide to their employees in order to be able to use these tools in the right way. We talked about things like, providing the right prompt for ChatGPT in order to get the best output. These are skills that will have to be learned, I think, by a majority of knowledge workers, professional workers in the coming years, if not months, because right now in AI, we're talking in months now, not in years anymore. So again, understanding and knowing how to use these tools, I think, is level 1 of upskilling, we might call the current workforce. Level number 2 is being able to interact with these tools at a deeper level, which involves some more technical knowledge, I would say, about how these tools work. So I think maybe in a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, professionals in every field will be a lot more knowledgeable about how an AI model works, for example. We will be talking about neural networks, we'll be talking about algorithms, modeling, parameters, all these buzzwords that are now being, thrown very frequently when we talk about AI, but they're still very mythical words, I would say, for most people. This technical lingo will be shared by a wider group of professionals because we will all need to understand, even if it's just at a surface level, how these systems work and how we can help in optimizing them. I also see a lot more companies developing their own proprietary AI tools. So if we're going to go in that direction, I think a lot more people will have to be able to, handle that knowledge and have and know the language that AI speaks, so to speak, in order to be able to improve these tools and to make them, progress in this scale towards general artificial intelligence.
Interesting, Renzo. And now I see it like with that information that you were sharing is like the artificial intelligence is getting ready, it's getting prepared step by step, little by little. And I think we have to do the same. We need to get ready. We need to be prepared. We need to know how to use this tool. So we need to train ourselves as well with this new tool. What do you think?
I completely agree. I think you summed it up beautifully. Now is the time to get ready and to start learning about these tools.
Yeah, it's not the time to be scared. It's the time to be to get ready for it.
Exactly. It's not the time to be scared. It's the time to be curious.
That's an interesting word there. Curiosity, I think that's the one. As you mentioned, well, you have recently recorded this English course for the use of artificial intelligence tools. And I'm sure our listeners, our students who have this curiosity in this topic, they can find further and deeper information about this topic, right?
Definitely. Check out the course. There's some useful vocabulary that you will need precisely to understand the language of artificial intelligence. We talk about prompt engineering. We talk about the different professional roles even in the AI industry. So I think that course might be really interesting for people that are thinking now, what if I worked in the AI industry in a couple of years? So for those people especially, I think this course will be essential. You should check it out.
Absolutely. You should go and check it out, our listeners, of course. And well, Renzo, thank you very, very much for this conversation, for sharing this expertise that you have on this topic, for answering these questions. And again, thank you very much for coming to this episode of English in Action.
Of course, Andres, thank you for the invitation. It was great talking to you and sharing all this information. And I hope, you and I and everyone listening to this will be learning more and more about AI each day.
Absolutely. And of course, to all our listeners, thank you very much for listening to this episode of English in Action. Stay tuned to a brand new episode next week. Remember to go to platzi.com/English Academy to never stop learning. See you next time.
This was English Academy, Platzi's English podcast. Thanks for listening. Share this podcast if you liked it and let us know which topics you would like for us to discuss in future episodes by going on Twitter and using the hashtag PlatziEnglish.